So, good evening from India. Hi, I am Naman Pant, a volunteer for PSSM India and PSSM Global. Welcomes you all on today's session. And I would personally welcome all of you on PMC Meditation Channel Global. So today I've gathered because one of the learnings that I've had is one of the three sutras that Patri sir has given is first is to do the right reading, do meditation, and surrounding ourselves with right company. Right reading is something that Sir personally emphasizes that all masters across the world should do. And I've taken it upon myself to give the learnings from the book called I've Decided to Live 120 Years by Ilchi Lee. With the title of this book, so first we'll talk about Ilchi. Ilchi is the writer of this book, and he was born in 1950 in South Korea. And since his childhood, Ilchi it was hard for him to discuss, it was hard for him to focus in their school, on his school. And eventually, he graduated from a BTech degree and opened up his first institute of body and mind in 1985. And since then, from one center, he has grown the entire organization to 300 centers across the world, talking about the mind-body relationship and how you can train your mind to live a fulfilling life. Uh, as you can see, the title of the book is I Have Decided to Live 120 Years. The reason I picked it up because after Sir recommended it's our most recommended book to read. It was the 120 years was a very peculiar number. I was personally interested. I first thought was maybe the book is all about anti-aging or life, how you can use meditation to prolong your life. As we know that all um, the Indian yogis have lived more than 120 years. But why 120 years? What's the relevance? And I could find out the top learnings for me was that 120 years when you're living your life, it's not a decline. Most of us think that, after retirement, it's just a decline or a regression of life. But it's more towards the completion of life, of how you can plan your life in a way that the number of years that you decide to live, it could be 90, it could be 100, 120, 150, 140, is a fulfilling life. It's not a decline. Eventually as you grow old, you don't decline, you complete your life. Second learning that I got was this book is definitely not about anti-aging, or it doesn't have a secret formula of how you can increase your life. It's the basic principle that he talks about is you create your own reality, which I think every pyramid master is very familiar with, that what you decide happens, and with your willpower you make it happen. Third thing is he talks about the potential of life. And because most of us, after retirement, people think that they just have to sit down, support their family, or, give some sort of support somebody else in some ways. But imagine that as you grow older, you are not being told, you're not being uh, asked for it, or you have all the time you need in the world to do whatever you want. And our generation, or rather the previous generation, which is currently at the older age, are at a much better financial state, those who have planned. And then the previous generations, the facilities, the technology, the support, the medical, this thing is much better than what it was 100 years back or 50 years back. So these I think are the key learnings that I got from the book. But I would really focus on the series. And I'm not going to cover the entire book today, but the entire book is divided into 10 classes, which we would do every Mondays and Thursdays, most probably at 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. IST. Uh, okay, so currently I would say Ilchi is running his own center. He's staying in Arizona, USA, and he is running Arizona his own center called Sedona Ilchi Meditation Center. So coming back on the point of 120 years, so Ilchi actually talks about why 120 years is the first question that comes, because most of us, we feel that 80 years is the highest anyone can live, or 100 years is highest anyone can live. But biologically it is possible for cells to grow, regenerate till 120 years. And the registered, confirmed age of the oldest human being available, ever lived, was 122 years. Although we have known that a lot of Indian sages have lived for way more than 200 years, but the verifiable birth date, according to what Ilchi has mentioned in his book, is 122 years. So 120 seems like a reasonable number to figure out, to decide to live for yourself. So coming back to the point that Ilchi talks about why he decided to live 120 years. The 120 years is not a fixed formula. He says that you have to decide for yourself for how long you want to live. For him, he has decided 120 years. And the reason he decided to live 120 years is because he later, like, he's 67 years old right now. And when he was writing this book, he was 65. And his father died at the age of 94. So it got him to think that, and his father was very active during his 80s, and it got him to think about the way people live their lives. Usually in Korea, Japan, there is a culture where people have a particular lifestyle, and Japanese in particular are known for the highest, uh, longest living human beings on earth. So he talks about seeing his own father live 94 and completing his life, and seeing other people. So he states that in this book, he met a person who is 102 years old, and he plays golf with him. And instead of using the cart, he says that although he used the cart at that point, his son talks about how his father has maintained the habit of walking 4 miles every day. Doesn't matter if the weather is bad or it's raining or snowing, he takes his umbrella and he goes out for a 4 mile walk. And how the consistency, the mindset, or rather the purpose that he has chosen for himself, is helping him to stay sharper even at the age of 102. So all of these experiences, he kind of gets a little awakening from all the experiences that he gets, and that he realizes that all these things, that the biological, conditions of the family, or rather the age at which the family members are usually surviving, or the environment, the medicine, all of this, they are not a primary source of how long will he live. He realizes that he actually couldn't believe that he could decide, by his will, on how long will he stay. And that's, I think, is the whole changing point for him. And that's where I guess the book came from, because he mentions clearly that he hadn't thought that life could go so long. And thinking about, himself was thinking about 80 years of age of his life, right? And he was 65. So he thought that maybe he is towards the end of his life, like every one of us thinks. But the moment he started thinking about 100 years, 120 years, he realized that he has completed 50% of his life. So he still have next 55, 60 years left for him to actually start working, start creating. And I believe that if we all think, I'm 30 years old, and if I think that okay, Naman is going to live 120 years, and I still have 80 years, 80 to 90 years to live. And the entire perspective, the entire thought process of how I will manage my own life changed for me. And this is where it gets interesting. And this is where he says that if the time I might have after that, after my retirement, was missing from my life's plan. So he says that the time, the extra time that I've decided for myself, I haven't planned for it. So if I don't plan for my life, even though he survives for 100 years, 104 years, would be a constant, a day-to-day, challenge of surviving from one day to another. It won't be a fulfilling life where he mentions that the death is not the end of life. Death is the completion of your life. So this is where he starts to design his own life, saying that, okay, he started thinking about, okay, I'm 67 years old. And if I say that I'm 80, I'm at the end of my life. But if I think I'm 120, I have 50 years. So how will I use my 50 years to be fulfilling, to help uh, this planet Earth, to help Mother Nature? How will I be productive, even when I am 100 years old or 110 years old or 120? So there he decides for himself that he will do 10 hand push-ups every day for the rest of his life, or as long as he can. So this, like the person he met, who was 102 years old, who would walk 4 miles every day, Ilchi for himself has decided to do 10 handstand push-ups against the wall every day. And I personally believe that this is a very interesting perspective, because now if I think that if I have 90 years to live, 90 more years to live, I can plan my life in a way where all the 90 years are productive, and it adds to my, it leaves a legacy behind on how I lived my life. And the moment I started thinking in terms of, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And clearly for me, the way I look at things has changed based on this one simple fact, that if I decided to live 120 years, I can plan my life, I can create my own reality, and I can live every day from that perspective. So this has been my personal learning. So he eventually he moves on to how Japanese culture, people in Japan live longer. So he also mentions that there was a very famous saying in Japanese culture that if you multiply your life by 0.7, it actually tells you about your current life, on the state of your life, or rather the state of your physical body and the state of your mental health. So if I go by that point, he says that if you multiply your current age by 0.7, only then it's claim do you get the age you actually feel physically and mentally. So there he says that if a 50-year-old is actually a 35-year-old person, 60-year-old is actually a 42-year-old person, and guess 120-year-old person is actually 84-year-old. So why this age as we grow, why does it, the common mentality that it declines as we grow old, our life declines as we grow old? He says that it all started in Germany in 1889. There he mentions that the average, so right now, the average retirement age for us is 65 years old. He said that the practice of defining 65 as the beginning of old age was started in Germany in 1889. Over this 120 years, 140 years of time span, the age 65 year old, the number 65 stayed. However, the average lifespan of humanity, which was 50 years old in 1889, and currently it is 79 years old, 79 years. So what it says is, when humans were 50, the average lifespan was 50 years old in 1889, the retirement age was 65. And now, when the average lifespan, because of advancement in medical history, the advancement in technology, the mindset, this inclination of humanity towards spirituality has increased, and we have increased our lifespan to 79, our retirement age is still 65. And this was a very interesting perspective because I see people from every walks of life, my father, my friends' fathers. The age 65, people especially look forward to life till 65 and life after 65. But the life after 65 is in the declining mode of life till 65. And this simple perspective of retiring right now, as of 2020, retiring when you're still at the peak of your life, at when you can still think and work 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and you retire, your mind certainly accepts that, okay, retirement has come in. And from there the decline from where the decline starts. And if we rethink our life in terms of 65, in terms of 120 years, you are still closer to halfway there. You still have 55 years in your bucket to manage. And Ilchi says that if you don't plan those 55 years, what will keep you going? So this, I think, is the most interesting thing that I've come across in the book. And then he talks about the philosophy, the Korean philosophy, which says that do your best and then await the will of heaven, which means that you do your part 100% and you leave it like that. You don't expect, because he says that although no one can guarantee when your last day is, you still have to do your part. You still have to decide. If you have decided to live 100 years, 120 years, you still have to do your part. Doesn't matter what your the reality is, for you. And I think it's a very interesting perspective, because the moment you start living every day as with the philosophy of that you have decided to live this many years, and this is the task that you have accepted for yourself, I think it becomes very interesting for you, because every day you get up and you do your 100% and you don't expect in return. You just leave it to the will of the heaven. And you keep doing that until, you keep taking care of your body, you keep taking care of your food, and you keep taking care of who you surround with. I think will lead you to eventually lead a happier life. Certainly a longer life than you would have lived without thinking about your life after retirement or your second half of your life. And in here, I actually can share one of my personal experiences. So in 2016, I met Patri sir for the first time. And after meeting in 10 minutes, he started speaking things that only I would know. And he said, Naman, you are doing three things wrong. He said, you are eating wrong, you are reading wrong, and you are living wrong. And when I was reading this book, all 3 points came back to me, saying that I'm eating wrong. What does it mean? In this book, Ilchi says that your food becomes your body. So if I eat right food, if I eat healthy food, that food will eventually become my body, which will eventually support my intellect and my conscious, which will eventually help me achieve my goals that I have decided for myself in this lifetime. And the day I realized that, okay, I think he made more sense. It took me 6 to 8 months, but I eventually figured out that if I eat right food, which is pure, healthy, vegetarian, vegan food, and if I took care of my body by knowing when to sleep, by being disciplined in my lifestyle, And if I ensured that I should surround myself with right people who have the same mindset of supporting you, pushing you to achieve more, or helping you plan better, challenging you, then I think I can live a more prosperous life, a more happy life. And I think this is where he got me started off. And I think this book validated that those points, which I think is beneficial for all the masters across the globe. And eventually he started talking about the benefit of exercises, how 75 150 minute of moderate exercises through a week can add 3 to 4 years in your life. If even if you do half of it, you add 1.8 to 2.8 years of in your life. And I think this is where it gets little interesting, because as you grow older, it's more on your habits that guide you to live a healthy, prosperous life instead of your willpower. You start with your willpower, yes, but eventually that willpower becomes your habit, and then your habit drives you. It becomes subconscious. Your mind starts, your body just knows that you have to work in a certain way, and eventually your lifestyle improves, which intensely helps you to improve your life. And one thing that he talked about was the mindset, the attitude, your attitude towards your life, where he said that if you, your social relationships, uh, where Sajjan Sangatya, in India we call Sajjan Sangatya, where all the right people that Patri sir talked about in 2016 helps you to add more years in your life. It's your basic mindset of helping others, of ensuring that you have a positive outlook towards life, helps you to add more years in your life. Where he said, he he specifically said that Dr. Becca Levy of the Yale School of Public Health said that you tend to live about 7.5 years longer than those who have a negative perspective in their life, which is equivalent to 20 to 30% reduction of premature mortality. This was the study that was conducted on 300,000 participants. And this was the result of that study, that you, on an average, live 7.5 years longer if you have a positive look at your life, and you tend to be more optimistic. You take things as a lesson, not as a failure. And I think this definitely helps you to improve your life in a way where you have a more, and you encourage others as well, because as you grow older, more people tend to look towards you and up to you, your say grandson, grandchildren community. And the more optimistic view you have in your life, the it's more motivating for you and for the others to live a life like that. So this is what he talks about. Same thing about habit that he spoke about. And when he when you basically talk about the will and the mindset, these are the 2 points I think he talks about very frequently. Having the mindset to actually live 120 years, because what will happen when you don't have a plan to live 120 years? Once you've grown, once you've retired, once you've taken off from your business. I've seen a lot of case studies. So there is a lady which started Nebraska Furniture House in Omaha, and she died at 104, and she retired at 102. So this got to me, like, it hit me real hard that the lady ran a successful business which was eventually acquired by Warren Buffett, to that the lady lived for 102 years, or 104 years, sorry, and she worked till 102 years. this got me thinking that if I don't have a plan for myself, how will I lead my life? So each and every one of us can choose how we will use the time and the life that has been given to us. And this is the right, this is the power and a human right that every one of us should follow. But very rarely anyone follows the right to exercise free will. And this got to me thinking that if I work for 102 years, then what will I do for next 16 years? Most people, most of us, we don't think in that term. Most of us don't practice free will, where we know that we have the right to do whatever we want to do, whatever is right for us. And most people, even including me, I before this book, I was making very small, short-term plans, weekly plans, monthly plans, yearly plans, and that was it. The most I got was 5 years and decade, but that was more. I thought this was my vision. But when I read this book, I realized that my vision is for 120 years, not 10 years or 5 years or, 1 week or 1 month. And then he hit me that how limited I was thinking. Limited in the sense that I could not think beyond 10 years. And then it got me thinking that companies like Samsung, Nokia have been around for hundreds of years. And the same principle applies to everyone, that they started with a big planning of how they can run a company for 200 years or 100 years. And I think this is very common in Japanese culture, that the companies, they plan for 200 years. And this got me thinking that how will I lead my life? How will I spend my holidays? How will I spend my time at various stages of my life? The first 60 years, yes, I've been successful. The first 60 years are very simple. You work towards your job, you work towards your business, you tend to grow it as much as you can, and you make sure that you have titles, you have properties, assets, all those things. But what happens when you grow older? What will I do when I grow older? Or rather, what I will be doing in the second half of my life. And there it hit me that I have no plan for it. And then I realized that most people around me don't have a plan. And when I realized that I don't have a plan, then that means I don't have a direction to go on. And that's where the will to exercise the free will, the mindset, the habits, and the exercise, the food, the Sajjan Sangatya, the right company, came into being, that all of this is relevant if I want to survive for that long. And when you decide that, okay, I have a plan, and how will you execute it? There, Ilchi talks about consistency, how consistency helps you to achieve your goals. He says that day in, day out, you do the same thing to get extraordinary results. And when I realized, he mentions about a lady called Susan, which is from Tempe, Arizona. And he says that this lady decided to live 93 years. And he shares a very beautiful story of why she decided to live 93 years. And she says that while she was, and Susan has been a nurse all her life. She has guided uh, pregnant women. She's been helping women from birth, and she's been in the medical industry for quite long. And she was just resting on her porch one day, and the grandson just came in running saying, "Grandmother, if when I grow up and have my own kids, Will you be there to hug them like you are hugging me? And she said, sure, why not? And then she calculated how long will it be, and she came up with the age of 93. And she said that this is why I want to live 93 years, so that I can hug my grandchildren and leave a beautiful memory behind. And then it got me thinking what the impact of this life will be. When Suzanne shares her these lessons of why she is going to live 93 years to her son, her grandson, her grandchildren, what how their understanding towards life will change. And imagine when her grandchildren or when her children will share the same story with others, how impactful will it be for everyone who is going to listen to those stories. And this is the story that that Ilchi shared based on her his experience. And I think this is a very interesting perspective in my own experience. And he talks about three things, rather four things, that everyone should do. The first thing is that you decide for how long do you want to live. And he says that you have to sit in meditation, or you have to sit with yourself, and you have to decide how many years do you want to live. Then he says, once you come up with the number, be it 93, 80, 100, 120, whatever it is, you divide your current age from that number, which will tell you how many years are left for you to make a change or to create some value. There he decides, and then he says, okay, now you have the age and you have a goal. Now think that based on the number, do I have a goal for, X number of years? Do I have a design for these many years? And then he says that you imagine how your life looks like. So for me, I have decided that I'm going to live 106 years till 2095. If I divide it right now, I have 76 years left to live. In these 76 years, I intend to do well professionally and make sure that when I retire, after retirement, I spread meditation, I spread spirituality full time. And I make sure that humans, or rather my fellow humans, know these principles so that they can implement those principles in their life. So for me, my grand project is how I can help people live longer and how I can do well in my professional life and in my personal life. How happy can I be for until 2095 or 2096? Similarly, he also urges that every listener, or rather every reader, do this exercise. And I personally would love to encourage you. I would urge you strongly to go sit down with a pen and a paper in a quiet room and ask yourself these questions. How long do I have to live? How many years are left? Do I have a design? Do I have a goal? What will I do after I retire or after I quit my business or job? And then you visualize yourself doing that. Visualize yourself in that age and see how beautiful it will be for everyone. And all the reader, all the listeners who are doing this, if you want to share this with me, you can share it on decided to live 120 years at gmail.com. I would love to read all your experiences, and I would love to comment, and I would love to take inspiration from you. And when he talks about, and once you have done this, he beautifully says that today may not be today be the may not be the case that it is your last day, but today is definitely the first day of the rest of your life. And I encourage all of you to sit down with the pen and the paper and answer these questions for yourself. And if you like to share it with me, you can share it on decided to live 120 years at gmail.com. And I would like to end it with a story of where Patri sir himself says that he's going to be on this planet till 2096. And he will ensure that the entire world is Dhyan Jagat, entire world meditates, and entire world is vegetarian. And I intend to make it my life's purpose as well. And I would love to know your life purpose. And with this, we will conclude today's session. And I thank all of you to for your patience, patiently listening to me. And I would like to share that this is the first time I've done live in front of a camera in my entire life. And for me personally, it has been a very incredible experience. And I look forward to 10 more experiences like this. And I would urge you to stick around and let me know on the comments about the feedback that you may have for the video. And I would like to request all of you to subscribe to PMC channels, PMC Global, PMC Hindi, PMC Telugu, which ones you like, and to stay around for more content like this, for more swadhyas, the learning of the self. And I will see you on Monday. Thank you so much.